go ahead and make sure to consent to the recording. And then with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pass it along to Melissa, who will get us started today. So Melissa, the floor is yours.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Super excited to see so many familiar faces and a few new ones today. So thanks in advance for your time, and hopefully we'll come out of this with some additional collaborations and more thoughts on working together as things move forward. Just a brief background on the Water Research Institute. The State Water Resources Research Act program was authorized by Section 104 of the Water Resources Research Act of 1984. And it's a federal and state partnership which established water research institutes in each of the 50 states and territories. So the research institute for each state or territory is located at the land-grant university for each state. And although the West Virginia Water Research Institute is housed here at WVU, we're not confined by the geographic border of the state. We work diligently in adjacent states to address water quality issues at a watershed-based scale. Programs and projects at the Water Research Institute are funded through competitively sought grants. WVU does not provide research opportunities directly to the Institute. And as a Water Research Institute, we're focused on providing sound science to guide policy and enhance our water resources. 3RQ is a major program of the West Virginia Water Research Institute. And now for a little bit of background on 3RQ and how we got started, since there are a few new faces here today. In 2008, reports came in that TDS and the Mon River were increasing and exceeding drinking water limits. We started monitoring in July of 2009 with USGS funding, and in September of 2009, a major fish kill in Dunkard Creek brought increased attention and concern to the TDS issue in the Mon River Basin. The fish kill occurred during a time when shale gas development was new and booming in West Virginia and Pennsylvania. And though testing determined that mine discharges were the source of high TDS, which provided a perfect storm for a non-native algae to bloom, resulting in the fish kill. And although the mine discharges were in compliance with discharge permit limits, during low flow conditions, the primary water volume in the creek was from mine discharges, which were very high in total dissolved solids. So taking action, Director of the Water Research Institute, Paul Zemkavich, developed a total discharge management plan, a simple way for mine operators to limit discharges during times of low flow, holding back water and underground mine storage. Industry voluntarily adopted the plan in January of 2010. And here's kind of a breakdown of that timeline. Data shows that the total discharge management plan actually solved the sulfate issue on the mine before it was listed by EPA as contaminated. We were pretty far ahead in providing a very quick action in result of the high TDS that we were seeing in the Mon. And pretty exciting, but in 2014, the Mon became the biggest river delisting in the Clean Water Act history. And making that bold move, EPA requested and used 3RQ data to verify data collected by Pennsylvania DEP to provide for the delisting. So after successfully monitoring on the Mon and creating sort of this model, partnering academic research and watershed groups, we expanded to include the Allegheny and the Ohio, resulting in the official birth of 3RQ in 2011. So what are we doing now? Since 2011, our academic partners, some of which are on the call today with Duquesne, we've been partnering to provide sampling on the main stem and major tributaries in the Upper Ohio on a monthly basis for total dissolved related parameters. Due to funding cuts in 2011, we were unable to continue sampling on our Ohio stations, but we're hoping that if our current funding request is successful, we can reinstate monitoring at least on 5 sites on the Ohio in 2022, focusing primarily on some of the big industry concerns. The petrochemical plant in Beaver is one of those sites that we'd like to make sure that we're monitoring upstream and downstream. And volunteer organizations, which some of you today are with, and we're very happy that you're joining us. But volunteer organizations throughout the Upper Ohio are very busy collecting data and headwaters, whether it's through field logging or field sample collection, data logger sampling, or sending things off for analysis at analytical laboratories. And this is the most exciting part of 3RQ in my opinion, working with volunteer organizations. So we're excited to provide platforms like our Waters database, which Lisa will discuss a little bit further after I get finished talking. and being able to provide a platform for that data sharing through our ArcGIS maps. I know we have at least one person on here who's a big fan of ArcGIS stuff, so I'd love to talk to you more about that. And we're aiming to provide opportunities for engagement and problem solving. So through events like this Roundtable series, we're really hoping to expand opportunities for engagement and collaboration, learn from each other, and really find ways to make a on-the-ground difference for our water quality in the Upper Ohio River Basin. So we also do things like help out. Earlier this year, there was a fish kill on Chartiers Creek, and we connected with Chartiers Creek Watershed Association and the Washington County Watershed Alliance to perform some watershed assessments following that fish kill to identify some major areas of concern in the watershed. And then sadly, just this past Sunday, I saw reports early this morning that there was another fish kill on Little Chartiers Creek. While the first fish kill indicated that it was likely pesticide related, the most recent event was a gasoline spill. So while accidents can't always be avoided, that's why they're called accidents, but we can do our part to report and respond. Encouraging the general public to call and report things like fish kills is vital. A lot of times folks will see something and just assume because it looks like it's a significant event that chances are somebody else has already called it in and they don't need to. But being able to encourage the general public where they find information on who they need to call is pretty important. Thanks to Rachel, we've included on our website who to call whenever something happens so that folks at least can have an easy reference if they're on there Googling who do I call for a fish kill. We're hoping that maybe that's something that will pop up and help them alert the correct authorities. You know, these two different incidents have been pretty catastrophic for the Chartiers Creek watershed. But by being present and being out there, having boots on the ground, doing sampling, and really bringing it to the attention of the public is just one way that we hope that we can make a change. The second is identifying the sources of some of the major contributors of pollution and finding ways to alleviate those issues and prevent them from happening in the first place. So throughout the past few years, we've been making a lot of connections. Some of the most notable ones are listed here, but there's many others. I've been talking to a lot of people about all kinds of things happening in the Upper Ohio River Basin. But a few things I wanted to bring to your attention. There's a couple of big initiatives right now. One is through the Ohio River Basin Alliance, and the other is through the National Wildlife Foundation. And both of these organizations are leading efforts at the federal level to try to bring attention to the Ohio River Basin. Much like programs that have been established for the Great Lakes and the Chesapeake Bay, there really isn't you know, a big push from the federal level to provide funding for a very large scale basin restoration for the Ohio. There's a lot of individual efforts, but nothing that earmarks us funding at a federal level for the Ohio River Basin. So there are several different work groups that are happening, and we're providing a voice in both of those. You know, being part of the conversation, trying to be engaged in bringing attention to some of the things that are dear to our hearts on the side of water quality. Things like providing additional funding for acid mine drainage restoration, stream restoration in general, and doing what we can to improve our water quality. We've also partnered with Orsanco, who some of you may have heard of. They recently conducted a study on the Ohio River for PFAS, and we were able to contribute some funding for them to also collect a sample on the Monongahela and the Allegheny. Those results should be coming out hopefully publicly within the next 6 months or so. They're going through a lot of data verification and determining the messaging and how they want to roll that out and present that data to the public. So that's something that we're really excited about. PFAS sampling is pretty concerning because it's one of those things that just doesn't ever go away. So being able to have an idea of what the levels of PFAS are and understanding how PFAS is distributed throughout the water column. Is it okay to go out and just get a grab sample Can you have any confidence in that grab sample that you collected, that, you know, the PFAS maybe isn't more heavily distributed in the lower portion of the water column versus the higher portion? So these are the sorts of things that we're working with these organizations to try to learn more about as they go through their research studies. We also meet quarterly with folks with USGS, the EPA, West Virginia DEP, Pennsylvania DEP, and Orsenco to talk specifically about PFAS studies that are happening in the Ohio River Basin. There's been a lot of developments lately with the analytical methods. Those have finally been published. The sampling methods are something that we're trying to learn as much as we can. There's a lot of risk of contamination for just going out and grabbing a PFAS sample. We're also learning a lot on the drinking water side of things. USGS has done a pretty extensive study at all of the source waters for our drinking water facilities in regards to PFAS. So we're following along in those conversations and seeing where things go. It's definitely something that we're concerned about and wanting to keep an eye on. We've also connected with Three Rivers Waterkeeper, who has been pretty quiet. I don't know that they've had one in the previous few years. We had been connected pretty closely with the previous Three Rivers Waterkeeper, Rob Walters. And when he left, they sort of went quiet for a while, but now they've got Heather and she's fantastic. And we're connecting with her. Three Rivers Waterkeeper serves a role that as a water research institute, we can't provide in terms of seeking some sort of legal action. So whenever watershed groups are out and they notice something, they have an area that they definitely know is contributing pollutant to a particular water body. We can help them provide the sound science and go out and do the water quality sampling. And then we can connect that group with a Three Rivers Waterkeeper who can actually take a legal action if needed to provide a resolution. So it's a really great partnership and we're really excited to be working with Heather on that. We've also connected with RAIN. RAIN is the River Alert Information Network. They've also been quiet for a few years and are now getting back up and running. RAIN has a program to provide, it's an alert information network at drinking water facilities. So they've got these continuous monitors at drinking water facilities at their intakes. So if they notice a pollutant or something coming in their water intake, they can notify immediately the next downstream water intake so that they can shut down their intake and not bring polluted water into their system. So that's something that we're looking forward to creating more partnership with the RAIN network. We've got a lot of good synergy in terms of the type of data that we collect and sending our samples off for chemical analysis. And they also provide a really good resource for instantaneous measurements on the river. So we can hop on their website and look and see what's happening real time, which is pretty fantastic. One of the most exciting partnerships is partnering with the Foundation for PA Watersheds. Brandon's with us today, and he's going to talk a little bit more about the Foundation for PA Watersheds. But earlier this week, we submitted an application to Colcom for our next funding request through Foundation for PA Watersheds. And we're looking forward to working with them more closely. Our hope, and we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves because we don't have the funding yet, but one of the big things that we're looking to have funded is to be able to provide additional money for assisting watershed groups with doing some sampling in advance of seeking 319 funding for AMD restoration projects. There are some groups that struggle, particularly in Pennsylvania, with trying to find money to do a year's worth of sampling in advance of applying for 319 funding for a construction project. So being able to provide that assistance, to be able to send our teams out if needed to collect the samples, to analyze the data and help them come up with a really strong application and very good information that they know what their quantity of water is going into the system, what the water quality is, what type of treatment will be needed, which will ultimately help them provide a more detailed cost estimate whenever they go into that application. So that's something we're super excited about. And Brandon's done a fantastic job connecting us with other organizations. We've got a call coming up with POWER, the Pennsylvania Organizations for Watersheds and Rivers. There's also a lot of synergy there in terms of the work that they do, the type of information that they provide for watershed group assistance. So that's something that we're really looking forward to. We've also connected with Harrisburg University. And again, if we're funded, we're hoping to bring some more visual enhancements to our online ArcGIS maps. They've got some really cool things that they can do with data visualization and just being able to provide a more meaningful experience to people that hop online and want to look at our data. Some folks don't necessarily understand what the values mean, or they see a spike in something. So the type of visualizations that they're looking to provide, I think, will be pretty intuitive, and I think they'll be very well received by the general public, and hopefully very useful for our watershed groups as they're working to do reports back to their funding agencies and out to the general public as well. And then we've also been involved with the Pitt Water Collaboratory, and we're having a meeting with them coming up in January. We've also connected with some Pitt researchers on putting in a proposal to the Heinz Foundation to do a study on the plastics around the petrochemical plant in Beaver. And we're hoping that that is a successful effort as well. We've also had some engagement with the Southwest Pennsylvania Water Quality Network. We've provided their audience of various different groups with information regarding our waters database and the Esri map platform, in hopes that they'll be able to share that and not recreate a wheel. There's a lot of existing data out there. There's a lot of groups that are collecting data, and we feel that we've got a pretty good platform to help people share that. In fact, the Municipal Water Authority for Westmoreland County actually created a YouTube video to show their general public users how they're using our 3RQ Waters database and using that as a way to share the data to the public through our Esri web map. So it's really provided a great service for them, and we hope that others will join in on that as well. And making the data accessible is something that's really important. We're looking to provide partnerships. If there are researchers out there or graduate students that are looking to have a great thesis project, we've got a ton of data and a lot of watershed groups that would love to have somebody dive into their data sets and really provide them with some meaningful information. And with that, I am going to come to a close. I forgot to time myself, so hopefully I didn't go too far over. But Lisa's going to provide some information on the waters database. And if you guys have any quick questions for me, I can take those. Everybody's so quiet. It's Thursday. We're almost here to Friday, so let's get excited.
And it doesn't look like there's any questions in the chat right now.
Okay. Man, I must have covered it all.
You did. You got it all very thoroughly, very quick, very thoroughly. All right, I'm going to get mine together here. Then.
While Lisa does that, thanks again. And if you guys have any questions or ideas, feel free to reach out to me in the chat, or you can shoot me an email. We love engagement.
All right, let me get you to here. And I will do this. And there we are. Okay, so I'm not going to give a live demo. I've been giving a lot of those. And if you're interested in having a live demo, by all means, feel free to contact me and I will set one up for you. Instead, what I want to do is just sort of go over some of the main features of waters that you may find interesting and useful. Our goal with waters is to create a data community of all the people who are creating or using water quality data. And so we've built this database in order to facilitate that. Okay, first, what is Waters? Waters is a cloud-based relational database that handles water quality parameters. It was originally designed in 2015 and housed on a dedicated server at West Virginia University. It was for AMD chemical parameters only. Due to the amount of programs that were on that server, we experienced some glitchiness, and the database really didn't work the way users wanted it to. And so we shut it down for a year, redeveloped it, and put it up on the cloud. So now it's been redesigned that whole year. It's very user-friendly, so it's not one of those databases that have complicated breadcrumb trails or that you have to hunt around to find what you want. It's a pretty simplistic database deliberately because we want people to use it. And so it's easily modified now that it's up on the web or on the cloud. It's also an inexpensive modification. So anything that users want to have added to the database, we can easily do. Additionally, we do offer some limited visual representation of data. And you can see here, it is handled by or controlled by the West Virginia Water Research Institute out of the West Virginia University that Melissa just told you all about. So that's how we access it and who maintains it yearly for us. So why do you need it? Well, many watershed groups had told us that they had no real way to manage their data. Most of the data was held on a bunch of different Excel sheets from a lot of different people. And one thing that we've experienced recently is a loss of data from one of our users who had not been putting their data into our system, and one of their members who had controlled all their data left with their data. So they've lost years of data because they were not able to get it into Waters. So what we do is we provide a warehouse for your data. You can easily import data and export it back out. As I said, we do have some visualizations in the form of graphs, but we also give you the ability to create your own reports. And you can filter the data for those reports so that you're only looking at what you want to specifically view. What that means is that you can say, for instance, I only want to look at parameters where the pH was between 5.5 and 8.5. It will then query the database of your data and only give you back that particular data set. So you don't have to wander through pages and pages of Excel sheets. You can just go in here and very easily and quickly retrieve what you want through the export feature. This is your home screen that we have for the database, and you can see it's very simplistic right now. We are adding modifications. I'm currently in development on 2 additional modifications, and we just put a new one in on the data logger side. So we do update the database on a regular basis. Those updates are generally paid for by the partner collective of 3RQ. So, you know, many of us pitch in some of our funding money in order to upgrade the database. These are the current parameters that Waters can handle. These are, as you can see, lab parameters in addition to field sampling parameters. And as you can see, these are all mostly chemicals that we would notice from AMD and other types of drainage like that. But we're expanding the database. That's one of the mods I'm currently working on. So the expansion is going to include biological parameters in addition to new chemical parameters. Again, this is what we currently have. What we are adding chemically are all of these parameters. These are now in our current mod that I'm working on. And you can see we're going to be giving you quite a lot of options in the way you measure things. For example, right now we have, as you can see here, our precipitation over here. This is the precipitation as you are sampling it. And this is usually a text field. But now what we're adding is 24-hour, the previous 24-hour precipitation. So now you'll be able to drill down your data to see, are my numbers the way they are because it rained yesterday, not just today? And prior to that, we had not been capturing that metadata. We're also offering the ability to do a measured turbidity, whereas right now we have a visual turbidity. This would be a text field of things like it's muddy, it's clear, it's murky, whereas now you'll be able to measure it using your NTU units. In addition to these chemical parameters, we are also adding in biological parameters. We're going to start with algae and bacteria. So what we're adding in are all of these types of algae. With these fields, we have one of our partners out of West Liberty University who is actively gathering this data. So he has about 2 years worth of data. He's been waiting for this modification to go in so that he can upload that data. We're also adding in bacteria in the form of E. coli counts and total coliforms, so that if anybody is out there gathering bacterial data, they'll now be able to put it in once that modification goes through. What does it cost? It doesn't cost anything for you to use right now. The cost is zero because West Virginia Water Research Institute maintains the yearly fees. So you can be comfortable that your data is not going anywhere, right? They have agreed to continue maintaining the basic database on the cloud. And so therefore, any data you put in, you will always be able to get out. You will not be losing your data. You don't have to worry about a member that holds your data suddenly leaving, or if 3RQ suddenly goes belly up, the database is still there. It's not going anywhere. Now, as I said, any modifications that you might want are paid for by the requester. So the modifications that I just discussed with you, those are being paid for by West Liberty. I'm kicking in a little bit. The West Virginia Water Research Institute is kicking in some. And so that's how those modifications are going in. Should any user in the community want to alter the database, we are happy to do that. You will need to provide the funding for that. And of course, that cost will vary based on what modification we're talking about. And finally, right, how can you access it? Well, it's right here on the West Virginia website. That's why I keep showing you this. Here is our particular website out of the West Virginia. And in order to access Waters, you simply scroll to the bottom and we have a lovely volunteer login here next to our data maps and our Facebook access. Now, why would you want to use this? Well, being part of a data community offers you a lot of benefits that you don't get when you're out there collecting data on your own. For example, it's going to render your data organization very easy. You'll be able to enter your data. It goes up so quickly. I mean, you hit the button to load it, and as long as the template is right, it goes in immediately. You can access the data for the most part immediately as soon as you upload it. So as soon as you put it in, you can work with it, especially logger data. You are allowed to generate a specific date range. Depending upon whether you're looking at field or logger information will determine whether you can pull that by day, by month, by year, by week. You can see that we will always offer you a min, max, and average of whatever parameters you choose. So you will get a data table that summarizes whatever data you've picked. This is specifically lab data, but it also works on the logger data. So as you know, if you use loggers, some of those files can come in 16, 20,000 rows. Going through that to turn it into a min, max, and average is extremely laborious. Therefore, we've given you this, which comes back an immediate return. In addition to giving you a data table with your min, max, and average, we also can provide you with limited graphing capabilities. Here's the same exact data that I just showed you in the data table, but in a visual representation. And this is not live, so I can't show you, but as you hover over each of these bars, it tells you the exact date that you sampled. So you can tell by month, but you'll also be able to see which dates that came in. So each of our data types, that would be our logger data, our lab data, or field data, will have graphs associated with it. Biological data right now currently will not have a graph associated with it. So if you have more questions, you can ask now, or here is our contact information. I can handle any questions you might have about Waters. Melissa, of course, would be who you would go for anything regarding 3RQ. And I'm going to be handing this off now to Rachel, who shows us our 3RQ maps and does the outreach.
Thanks, Lisa. Let me share my screen. All right, is everybody seeing the 3RQ homepage? Yes?
Yes.
So I'm very quickly going to go over our 3RQ maps. And as Lisa mentioned, the waters database requires a login, but these 3RQ maps are a way to share information with the public and also visualize the data entered into waters. And so you can navigate to the maps by going to our data tab and clicking 3RQ maps. And you'll see some background information, that lovely video Melissa mentioned from the Municipal Authority of Westmoreland County. And then you'll see we have quite a handful of maps. Our all site locations just shows you all of the different sites that we monitor in. We have a monthly data map from our 3RQ partners monthly monitoring. And then we also have our yearly averages maps, which show data collected since the start of the program in 2009. And then if you scroll down to 3RQ members, that would be watershed groups, conservation groups, any volunteer group that's using waters to house their data. And so we have schools, we have a separate map for data loggers, and then we have this volunteer data map for discrete data. So I'm clicking on this map and just want to give you a little teaser, and then you can play around with these on your own. You can see that we have quite a few volunteer groups and a lot of different areas. And if you look on the legend, you can see those group names and colors if you want to specifically see what a group was monitoring. Or you could zoom into a particular area of interest and click on the data point to see what group monitored, what results they were collecting. If you click this next feature, you'll see the next date. And then if you click down here, you can see a different group collected a sample there, and they might have collected different parameters. And so by housing our data on ArcGIS Online, there's a lot of really great features, including the measure tool, the ability to print or share as a PDF, the ability to share as a link. You can also change the base map. So if you wanted to look at imagery instead, you could change that base map very easily. And then one final tool is the ability to modify the map. So I clicked modify, and then you can add any data shared through ArcGIS Online, and vice versa. Our data is also shared in ArcGIS Online, so you could add our data to your maps. But I'm going to quickly just show you how you could do that. So I would add and then search for layers, and then say I wanted to look at abandoned mineland in that area. So I'm searching for that, and here is a data layer published by the PADEP. And then I just click the plus button, and that data is added to my map. And so this is just a great feature, and it really, there's a lot of data out there on ArcGIS Online, so you're able to play with all of that data and see really anything you're interested in. And so if anybody else has questions about the map, I'm happy to answer them, but I do want to give plenty of time for Brandon to give his presentation. So I'll give a quick second for questions. Anybody? All right, so I'll turn it over to Brandon. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Good morning, everybody. If you haven't had the opportunity to interact with these ladies, please do so. It's been a pleasure. Certainly, they have a vast knowledge base and certainly are well connected with people in the watershed world. So Foundation for Pennsylvania Watersheds is really looking forward to collaborating with them, bringing together some of our resources related to project management, project implementation, project funding, as well as addressing some of the policy issues that we've been doing really since our foundation was formed in 1994. So typically we're working on federal and state policy issues, and that's kind of where I'm going to start at today and go over some of those new things that maybe you've heard in the news, bring up some of the things that we're a little bit concerned about, and then hopefully convince you to provide us with some much needed feedback related to some programs that are out there, how we think you can help us. And then really ultimately, we're struggling sort of as an environmental community to figure out some needs assessment issues and trying to really make sure that the next generation of funding that's coming in is optimized and that we're using that to the best of our ability. So again, the Foundation for Pennsylvania Watersheds is based in Pennsylvania. We're a nonprofit. We provide grant funding, and we were started by the Heinz Endowments as a program of the Heinz Endowments, and then became our own organization in 1994. We aggregate funds, we provide them back out for a multitude of restoration projects. So if you're thinking along the lines of what 319 funds, that's really kind of what we fund as well. And then one of the neat projects or program areas that we fund are convening grants. And these grants are small grants that are up to $2,000 that are really aimed at helping organizations to develop capacity, to bring in experts to provide testimony for state and federal legislation, as well as to facilitate conversations with the local community. Earthwise Consulting, obviously we're a consultant to them. Sort of our specialty is to take square pegs and put them into round holes. Most people say you can't do that. I say if you have enough sandpaper, it works. So that's really what we try to do, is try to figure out ways to get things done and figure out a creative solution to problem solving. So that's a little bit about our background. And then certainly I'm sure that we'll be able to supply some contact information on the backside of the presentation today. And hopefully you'll take advantage of that opportunity to say, hey, Brandon, you're totally out in left field, or hey, Brandon, I really like that idea. How can I learn more? And then hopefully you'll provide us with some understanding of your experiences and your needs as well. And so with that being said, we also provide technical services, sort of like 3RQ does as well. So certainly if we have some expertise that we can help you out in terms of understanding projects or refer you to other collaborators or partners, we'd be happy to do that as well. Footnote, OSMRE, obviously on the call today. So some of them may have better information than I do. Certainly on the call today, there are some state officials as well that may have better information than I do. So please, if you have information, let me know, correct me by all means. And really my my presentation is not intended to poke fun of or by any means offend anybody. So it's just facts as I know them. So the bipartisan infrastructure bill, BIF, as some people have been calling it, has been a huge windfall for the environmental reclamation community, especially those that are doing mine reclamation. That provides $13 billion with a B dollars for mine reclamation to 22 states and 3 tribes. It's going to create a lot of work for OSMRE. So that's a concern of ours. How can we help them to ramp up their capacity? How can we help to get rulemaking to simplify that process of getting those dollars out to those 22 states and tribes? How do we condense the authorization to proceed or ATP process to make that work? That BIF also was instrumental in extending the AML fee, the abandoned mine lands collection fee that has been reauthorized through the BIF for another 13 years. Few details on that. No guidance documents or rulemaking has been set forth yet. The potential is for those funds to be able to hit the states as soon as late February, early March. One of the things that we were a little bit disappointed in with the BIF was the inability to get a priority 3 amendment. So for those of you that are familiar with the AML fund, priority 1s and 2s are health and safety issues. Priority 3s are for water quality. Much of the work that we do in Pennsylvania is related to water quality, and fewer accidents are happening nationwide on abandoned mine lands due to outreach campaigns similar to Smokey Bear, only you can prevent forest fires. We've educated a lot of people about the dangers of abandoned mine lands. So it would be very nice if we could implement some of those projects that are strictly water quality based and not necessarily tied to a P1 and a P2. So we're still working on that. And then one of the things sort of as a call to action is for states and universities, nonprofits, and the private sector to reach out to federal officials, elected officials, as well as those in OSM. If you have a great contact in the Office of Management and Budget or other locations, it would be good to reach out to them as well. Let them know that we're looking forward to rulemaking. We're looking forward to putting those dollars to good use. There certainly isn't a shortage of need, and really just to ask for some flexibility in how those funds can actually be utilized. And there's slightly a need for a change in vocabulary too. So we're trying to get people to start thinking of waterways as infrastructure, AMD treatment systems, infrastructure. We've not done that in the past. Another issue that's impacting Pennsylvania is 2 CFR 200. This is a unified management strategy from the Office of Management and Budget. It was supposed to streamline accounting, but what it's really done is kind of created a mess in Pennsylvania because it's been interpreted that the DEP can no longer provide contracts for grants, that they have to provide sub-recipient agreements for grants. Kind of seems like a not big deal, but really it's really changed the idea of how those funds can get out to nonprofits. West Virginia has not made that same determination. So it's an interesting dynamic that we're kind of caught in the middle of. Some of you will remember the AML pilot program that has now been dubbed AMLR. So AMLR funds continue for 2022. Again, in Pennsylvania, 2 CFR 200 is precluding nonprofits from being able to access AMLR. And now OSMRE and the states are trying to figure out how AMLR fits within the framework of J40 or Justice 40. So what is J40 or Justice 40? Really, it's a reincarnation of an executive order under the Clinton administration. So the Biden administration has also put forth an executive order that requires 20 different federal pools of funding to participate in Justice 40. AMLR is one of those programs. So again, no specific guidance on how to implement Justice 40. Pennsylvania has sort of taken a strategy, and based on conversations with the Interstate Mining Compact Commission, other states seem to be taking a similar position that the goals set forth in Justice 40 actually allow for mine reclamation activities to meet the criteria of Justice 40 without any specific additional clarification. So that's kind of updates on some big picture items. And then what we're really trying to focus on and get a good handle on are operation, maintenance, and rehabilitation needs, as well as the Watershed Cooperative Agreement Program. I've talked to Robbie Fulton about this. So those folks that work with OSMRE, feel free to let him know that Brandon was talking about it again, and I'm not saying anything that I haven't already told him, is that there's some concern that with funds not being spent out of WCAP every year, that there needs to be maybe some additional flexibility within the WCAP program. So we're working to try to make that happen. And certainly any input that you have related to WCAP, horror stories, success stories, or just general inquiries would be welcome. So please let us know about that. And please participate. Rachel's putting together a fabulous survey to ask some specific questions, share those questions around with colleagues, friends, and people that you know that have input for that. Because really what we're trying to do with that is to figure out some pieces that we can go back to some federal partners that we've been working with, as well as congressmen that we have their ear of this need for operation, maintenance, and rehabilitation. And certainly we want to keep that separate from the BIF funding and the other funding because certainly there's not enough of that to go around to solve the problems. And last but not least, shamelessly, hopefully we will give you a presentation, not from us, but one of our other collaborators on Watershed. So much like Lisa gave a presentation on waters, Watershed is really sort of a Pennsylvania-centric tool, but we hope to roll that out to potentially cover those 22 states and tribes to get all of the AMD located into one centralized location. So again, Watershed, much like waters, allows you to keep your institutional knowledge in one place. It allows you to keep your easements, your as-built, your water chemistry, grant contacts, deeds, any sort of thing that's related to an AMD project in one centralized location. And the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection has bought into that so much that one, they fund it, and then two, their data is in there as well. So that was a fire hose of information. So I'll stop there. But certainly if you have questions, by all means, email me and I'd be happy to follow up.
Really quickly, I wanted to talk about that survey Brandon mentioned. We actually have it ready. If anybody is interested in filling it out or sharing it, we'll be sharing that for the next few sessions as well. So we have plenty of time to get as many results as we can. Let me share my screen. So you can just see a screenshot of what the survey will look like. It should take just a few minutes. And as Brandon mentioned, it's really focused on allowing us to assess what needs there are. It will be shared just between Brandon and 3RQ. So we really encourage all watershed groups to fill that out. If you're not a watershed group, please share it, and you can take a look at the questions and see if you'd like to fill it out as well, but it is geared towards watershed groups. And I just put a link to the survey in the chat as well. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Brandon, Rachel, Lisa, and Melissa, for those presentations and a wealth of information. Really appreciate it. I know I gained a lot from it since I am coming in new to the group. At this point in time, we do have a couple of moments to open the floor to any questions or comments that anyone may have. So if you do have a question or a comment, please feel free to come off of mute or type your question in the chat now, and we'll go ahead and take some time to address those.
Brandon, what is the, have you heard any speculation on the push to get the PADs rearranged from, level 3, PAD 3 for impaired waters down to 2 or 1?
No real discussion or update on that. In regards to that amendment for P3s that didn't get into the BIF, there's actually some movement afoot in DC to potentially put a rider or an amendment into any new legislation. And kind of the vehicle now, as many are aware, is that a continuing resolution for operation of the government. Oftentimes that gets kind of looped into sort of like an omnibus bill. And for those that don't have a political science degree, feel to think about that as it's grandma's stew. So she cleans out the refrigerator, everything goes into a pot. Omnibus bill similar to that. So everything that was on a legislative wish list that didn't get processed during the regular session potentially gets looped into that. The sad thing about the P3 amendment was really related to politics as usual. So a Democrat wanted to sponsor that, but he didn't have enough clout to be able to get it into the bill. So there needed to be a Republican sponsor, and nobody was basically willing to cash in the chits to make that happen. So now we're kind of working to either solve that issue through rulemaking or the potential to do that through an amendment. The nice thing about that, without getting overly complicated for the group, is so that since the AML fee passed as part of the BIF, there really isn't a need to open up the Surface Mining Control Reclamation Act of 1977, which actually legislates the collection of that fee. And that's always kind of contentious, is that if that sort of founding document gets dabbled with, changed, or otherwise, that opens up a whole can of worms that most people aren't willing to deal with. So, again, part of that too, Jason, is that if those funds get interpreted by OSMRE and OMB as state funds, and they can come into the state and not be federal funds, that's going to allow a greater level of flexibility to take that as 30% set aside funding, just like the AML fund, and to be able to use then that 30% set aside for those P3s, as opposed to, if that whole chunk of change comes in, and chunk of change is bad terminology. Pennsylvania is going to get something like $235 million a year, which is about 4 times what they're receiving now under the BIF. So that's a lot of work to be done. And certainly, I think all of us can envision the problems that that's going to create. Imagine if you had 4 times the income to your household. What projects would you start to do first? I mean, we would love to spend that money really quickly, but at the same time, we've got to spend it wisely, understanding that it's not enough money to solve the problems that are out there.
Well, it looks like it is 11 o'clock. And so I really quickly just wanted to thank everyone for coming and talk about our next 2 sessions. They will be a bit different from today. During the next session, we'll hear from our 3RQ partners at universities that assist us with sampling. And so I know Brady and Beth are on the call, and they're going to be talking about their work in Crooked Creek and their discovery of a state threatened fish. So we're all really excited to hear about that and other research at West Liberty University, West Virginia University, and Duquesne. And then during the last session, we'll be hearing from some of our newer 3RQ watershed groups. And so they'll be talking about what projects they have going on and kind of introducing themselves to the group. So we're really looking forward to that.
And another quick plug, just so you all know, if you don't know already, we also have another series that the West Virginia Water Research Institute is hosting, the virtual seminar series that is running concurrently with the session. The first session will be on December 16th at the same time, 10 to 11, and we will be reviewing a ton of information. The first session will be going over drinking water methods to reduce THMs, fine coal sediment transport analysis due to extreme storm events, and the Piney Creek Watershed Water Monitoring and Management Project. So if you're interested in any of those topics, make sure to register for that seminar as well. I have gone ahead and I have put both of our links down in the chat to take you straight to the webpage to learn more and register today. So thank you all again. We really appreciate you joining us, and we look forward to seeing you all in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.